It's Monday, December 22nd. I'm Jim Check. With me, Iain Burns, and he's rocking the Christmas shirt. It is Christmas week here. We'll tell you about our schedule tomorrow, I think, on what we're going to do here, because we got to discuss it first. I love that Christmas sweater, though. But it's just a few days before Santa comes down the chimney. And I don't know what he's going to bring for Canada, but we got a really big show. We always have a really big show. We're going to share some really cool things with you today. And let's kick it off with some of the big headlines. Carney says MPs think a pipeline is everything. The Second Testament is about to drop in Canada from Canada's Messiah. How's that? Poilievre says pipeline will be built no matter what. Economy a mess because of policy, not economics. And we got a lot on that when Rosemary Barton of CBC sat down with Mark Carney. Supply management, what it really means to everyday Canadians. Policies that benefit the few at the expense of the many. We preach on that all the time. Liberal shills chuck labels when facing harsh realities. AI takes a look at CBC and asks the question, is CBC biased? Put your bets in now with Polymarket. Post-secondary now using media to sing their song, Gold on Fire. And is there a federal election in the wind? Big Red goes home. EB gets international coverage from the Wall Street Journal. Not the best kind of coverage either. And pressure mounts on Venezuela. All that and a lot more on the really big show. The best undiscovered news commentary show on the internet by far. Please comment. Tell us where you're from. And share this as far and wide as you can so that we can make a difference here in Canada. Ready to rumble? But we do. The comments are important, so we got a little screen here to show you. Like we put some of these comments up that shows you some of the comments.
That's a good comment.
There's a blend. We like them all. Somebody called us Russian MAGA syrup or something too, right? Wow.
The Russia thing, the poorly educated Chanel under the influences of Russia's MAGA cult. This Russia thing, it's almost like a deadly parasite, isn't it? That's infested the brains of a certain section of, Western polities. I just, God help those people. They think that Russia is so powerful. Russia's kind of like a loser of a country. I don't know if you know that. They can't even they literally cannot maintain roads. They're in a desperate state in Russia. To think that they can obscure Canadian podcasts. it's just amazing, isn't it?
What it does show is people that have lost the argument and don't want to argue about the facts, so they just throw labels. And that's what they do. They just pull out the label gun, start labeling you whatever they can, and then they call you MAGA. If you disagree with the Liberals, you are ready to be labeled, I guess, right? Well, pull out the label gun. Here's Poilievre saying, building a pipeline no matter what.
What about the duty to consult with Indigenous leaders?
We should do that.
You would do that?
Of course.
And what if after those consultations, the answer is still no?
Well, the answer is given by the Prime Minister. And I'm
saying if the Indigenous leaders say no.
That I will thank them for their input, and at the end of the day, the Prime Minister has to decide. And my decision, and I'm telling Canadians before the election so they can vote on it, is I will approve a pipeline. Nobody has a veto.
How come the media doesn't know that? Like, why do they continue to ask the same question over and over again? Everybody should know that.
Well, because there's a lot that's unsaid, isn't there, when we talk about First Nations, when we talk about Quebec. What's the thing about Quebec? Whenever we talk about anything in federal politics in Canada, Quebec's iffy about it. What's unsaid? Increasingly now it is actually being said, but what's unsaid is they'll separate. They'll destroy Canada. We won't have this country anymore. We'll have Canada and we'll have Quebec, and that will make life miserable. What's unsaid about First Nations is if you keep saying no, there will be court cases that will cost potentially billions of dollars, destroy projects, and just make everybody's life miserable. Or alternatively, there will be, as there have been in BC on a number of occasions, violent protests and blocking of railways, and as it happened the GasLink thing where people were attacked with axes, and like that's what's unsaid. And that's why I think the journalists are like kind of taken aback when he says that, because he will get into trouble for that. He'll be called anti-First Nations or something like that, or he'll be called a racist or a colonialist or something just for having said that. But it is underlying all of this consternation from the media class and the political class when it comes to First Nations. It's basically a fear of violence, a fear of legal obstruction and physical violence, and I guess peaceful obstruction as well. Those three things. That's what underlines it. But as usual with Canadian politics, the whole system is just permeated with cowardice and spinelessness. And that's just how it works. Cowardice is the currency of Canadian politics, which is why it's so surprising to see Pierre Poilievre miraculously grow spine for this interview and for 10 seconds there be a politician with a real functional spine.
One of the things to watch, though, is watch, if you get a chance, watch some of this interview and then watch the interview with Rosemary Barton and Mark Carney, and look at, and then we're going to show you the biases that may be apparent to you even by just watching these interviews on the different tactics that are taken. We've got another clip here from Poilievre on the economy and why things should be dirt cheap here in Canada.
So let me maybe get you on the record then, Mr. Poilievre. If you, as promised, remove all of these, just as you said you would remove the consumer carbon price, will groceries become cheap?
Food should be really cheap in Canada because we have the most farmland anywhere. I think the 5th most farmland anywhere in the world. This is what's so frustrating. Everything should be dirt cheap in Canada because we have the most dirt. We have the most dirt to grow food on, the most dirt to build houses on, the most dirt to produce energy from.
So let me maybe...
We're going to show you some stuff later, how we can ship beef from New Zealand at half the cost.
Well, it's in that's the word, ship. That's why, well, one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that food is so expensive in this country is because it tends not to be shipped. It tends to be trucked, and land transportation is extremely expensive, which is why it's cheaper. In many cases, it's probably true, literally, of New Zealand on the other side of the planet. It's probably cheaper to get it from there to BC than it is to get it from like Quebec to BC. That's Canada's curse. Canada, in so many ways, is not a natural country. I mean, obviously, it's a line drawn on a map, isn't it? It's a country that was invented in the abstract rather than lived experience. Like most countries, or many older countries, are based on geographical features like mountains and rivers and things.
Challenge you on
That's not
something.
really true of Canada. And as a consequence, you've got this mad situation where British Columbia and Montreal are part of the same country. Right. And it's extremely hard to transport goods between those two countries. Hence, north to south tends to be the more common route. But I have to, once again, call out Pierre Poilievre saying something extremely foolish there, that Canada has the most dirt, as he said, and therefore houses should be cheap. The bit of Canada that people live in, and you can add this up yourself, you can do your own calculation, but it's about the same landmass as France. That's Canada. Canada in reality, in terms of where you can actually live and build cities and things, is about the size of France. It has this gigantic hinterland, obviously, which is very important and can't be disregarded. But when it comes to things like house building, you have to look at it like that rather than the second biggest country in the world. And I just wish he would stop doing that. And obviously nobody ever calls them out on it because I guess they just don't think about it. But the reality is we're not going to build any metropolises on Baffin Island. That's not going to happen. Therefore, that comment is just ridiculous.
One of our costs, you said, is transporting goods, but that is, again, our choice because our energy should be dirt cheap, to use Poilievre's words. Our energy can be dirt cheap. Most of it is taxation in some form of another, like in our diesel price. That's another choice we make, to tax our energy at extreme prices, to make it almost like it, like it adds a lot to the price of groceries to ship stuff across this nation.
Yeah, that's a contributor. But then in Europe, energy, as we've discussed many times, is many, many, many times more expensive than it is in Canada, and yet food is many, many times cheaper. And the reason for that, well, manifold. But one of the reasons is that they use marine transport a lot more. They have like lots of coastal cities. They have the Mediterranean Sea, they have the Atlantic Ocean, the Baltic Sea. Like, transport on water, either lakes or rivers or the sea, is just like orders of magnitude cheaper than land transport. It doesn't almost doesn't matter what energy you're using. It doesn't matter what the tax rate is. It is just so much cheaper to transport things over water. So that's kind of, that's why America is such an agricultural power, because they have the Mississippi and they can transport things down the Mississippi into the Gulf of America and send it out to the world. It just makes things so much cheaper. And obviously Canada only really has one sort of good navigable waterway, and that's the St. Lawrence, and that's of no interest to most of the country who live thousands of miles away from it.
We got a little clip here. We got a few clips here on Mark Carney sitting down with CBC's Rosemary Barton here, but let's listen in on this first clip here.
We are in a stronger position today with the United States than we were at the start of the year.
But only because, and I shouldn't diminish it, not only because, but because of what you're trying to do inside the Canadian economy, not because of anything that you've gotten from Donald Trump.
Well, we did get what we got is in August 1st, is the president confirmed that 85% of trade being tariff-free, the best deal of any country with the United States. That's having the best deal is pretty good, Rosie. Now, as I said a moment ago, it can be better. It's in, obviously, Canada's interest for it to be better. We will do other things at the same time. We think it's in the U.S. interest as well, but the U.S. will make that choice. It's their decision in terms of how much they want to have an integrated auto industry, which they have had for my entire life. They're taking a different path right now. We'll fight hard to change that opinion, but at the same time, we'll create new opportunities.
It's not like we got that deal. That deal was already there. There was no change to that deal. That deal is now in jeopardy as well as we head into negotiations.
In reality, that deal is Brian Mulroney's, isn't it? That's how old that deal is. I mean, it was obviously fiddled around with by Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. But either way, Mark Carney had nothing at all to do with that. And I mean, CUSMA is considered, or USMCA is basically considered to be like Trump's baby, isn't it? So it's kind of Trump's deal, if anything. So, I mean, it is. I kind of felt a bit embarrassed from there. But then Mark Carney doesn't have shame, so it's wasted. It's wasted to feel that kind of thing for Mark Carney, because he, as he shows in this interview, there's no amount of audacity that's too much for him. It's just outrageous to claim that that's a win. It's like, he got elected when USMCA CUSMA was in force, and while he was campaigning, he was talking about how tragic the trading situation was and what a disaster this was.
I get whiplash listening.
Here we are 9 months later.
Best deal, worst deal, best deal, worst deal. Worst economy of our time. This is almost like war. It's like,
yeah, the dishonesty. I mean, we do this all the time, obviously, and we kind of analyze the words, and we're trying to cross-reference with previous utterances. Most people don't do that, obviously, because they haven't got time to do that. But I feel like this is almost like it's audacity on such a level that it might even break through to kind of the average person, because I think the average person knows that that's complete nonsense, and that's deception of the highest order.
and then this is the other thing. When he does French interviews, he seems to be more forthcoming, maybe because he can't find the words to be more. I guess what the word is word salad. But in his French interview, he makes it clear that it was Ford's problem, like Ford caused the issue. So and he's done this in the past too. When we talk about pipelines in French, he says one thing, and then he speaks in English to another reporter, and he says it differently, and you're just like, you just don't know. It's like a Forrest Gump movie. You just don't know what you're gonna get.
That's a very good point, though, that I hadn't actually considered, that his limited vocabulary in French, even though his vocabulary in English is also very limited, but it's particularly limited in French, that restricts his ability to be, ambiguous to use word salads, as you said, and therefore he sort of, by necessity, not like reluctantly almost, he ends up being more forthright and candid and accidentally honest.
Well, talking about honesty, here he is calling basically your friend that doesn't answer your emails, Stephen Guilbeault, a liar. Let's listen in on how he calls him, like how he word salads this answer.
Yes, I think there's, well, it's not for me to judge. There are some people who were here under previous governments, previous situations, they can judge the degree of delegation. What will come with that is that people won't always say the same thing, and talking, that's great. That's fine. That's healthy. You know, that's normal life. People don't all say the same thing at the same
But that
time.
is the challenging part of the job, is it not? That sometimes you have people who are not happy with what you're doing, openly critical of it,
Yeah.
willing to walk away from cabinet, for instance.
Look, would I rather that, if we bring it back to Stephen Guilbeault, for whom I have tremendous respect, would I rather he had stayed in cabinet? Yes. Would I rather he had been there to see what transpires with the Alberta MOU, to see our climate strategy come out, our nature strategy come out early in the new year, both of which will happen? Yes. So he will continue to inform that, but from farther away. But I respect those decisions, and.
But if that was true, if you wanted him to stay in cabinet, why did you go about it the way you did? Because he didn't know the details.
He knew the details.
So what the things that are out there that he has said are not true?
I don't know I don't follow everything he says, but he knew what was in the MOU.
And
elements of the MOU were changed, consistent with his views.
So once he saw the deal, you asked him for more input and were willing to change them? Because
I did change some parts of it.
But Alberta was not happy with the changes?
No, they accepted the changes.
Okay, so then what is your understanding of what he wasn't happy with?
Well, these are questions for him.
Well, I asked Mr. Guilbeault, but what did he tell you about things then? What were you not able to give him?
We have a different approach.
Yeah.
It's amazing that Stephen Guilbeault has that much power that he would get him to change the MOU. And then still not be happy with it.
That's the headline.
That's the revelation there, that he has that much power in cabinet, that he got changes made, and that there's that much power over Alberta too to accept those changes.
And it's not Stephen Guilbeault per se, is it? I mean, Stephen Guilbeault is just merely a mammal in an ill-fitting suit, isn't he? It's what he represents, which is the province of Quebec, and specifically the city of Montreal, and the people of that city, and what they want and what they think, their prejudices about the world and all the rest of it. That's what he came to the table representing, and that just tells you, I mean, it tells you everything you need to know, really, doesn't it, about Canada in a nutshell, frankly, that this guy who in effect represents the sort of Montreal left comes in and complains, and then a piece of policy, like a foundational piece of policy relating to Alberta, thousands of kilometers away, is changed to suit the people of Montreal of a left-wing persuasion. I mean, is that not kind of like, if somebody asked you how does Canada work then? How are policies made? Just listen to that. Listen to that little chat.
That's
and not only that,
revelation.
but then he resigned anyway. It's like he's not even inside the tent anymore.
That is a huge revelation there, right there, and you just laid it out, and yet it doesn't seem to get much traction. Unbelievable. But this is the thing that I've been talking about for a while, and I believe the Second Testament, as the Messiah that came and rescued the Liberal Party here, is about to drop the New Testament on climate change. And they've been talking about it a little bit, and the methane is going to be a part of it, and so is CCUS, or carbon capture utilization storage, CCUS, and methane. These methane, now they're going on this methane emissions responsible for 30% of the global rise in temperature to date. Moving off of, but what does Canada, and you say this all the time, what does Canada actually contribute? Why are we sacrificing our economy and our people's prosperity at the altar of these climate religion that Mark Carney and the Liberals seem to want to benefit from, really? Like, again, if you search Brookfield and look at the billions and billions of dollars that have been invested in carbon capture, things start to make more sense.
But also look how disingenuous it is as well of Mark Carney there when he references that Reuters article, and then he says methane emissions are responsible for about 30% of the global rise in temperature to date. You might read that if you're a gullible sort. You might read that and say, Christ, like we've got to sort this out here in Canada right now. I'm so glad Mark Carney's on this. You know, this is like of enormous global significance. But again, how much of that comes from Canada? The answer is, just in terms purely of methane, it will be less than 1. What's the point then? It's deception yet again from Mark Carney. This from the man who says that he's not a politician. He doesn't politics, doesn't really understand politics. He certainly knows how to deceive people like a politician, doesn't he? He's mastered that art. Because that really gives the impression, you know, like the Greta Thunbergs of the world, people who are that sort of easy to manipulate and fool. They might read that and say, like, their heads might explode. They might think, like, Christ, like, what are we doing? Like, let's go and hack up some pipelines with axes or something, because this is just insane. 30%. And that's why it's so hot. That's why everyone's dying. That's why there are forest fires. Like, that's going to send some people into a psychological tailspin. And yet it's completely false, or it's completely misleading. In reality, as we've said on here many times, and as many people vastly more qualified than us have said many times, there is precisely nothing, not a thing that Canada can do to affect global emissions or climate change. Nothing, nothing at all. Completely and utterly powerless. But I mean, Mark Carney likes to talk about control, doesn't he? The things we can control. I think part of his psychology is that he likes to pretend that he can control that, as do lots of other people. So here we are. But the reality is, Canada has no power, no control when it comes to climate change. Nothing.
Well, here you go. Here's the media doing the work for the Liberal government and Brookfield, another U.S. carbon capture firm. And we predicted this, I think, months ago when we did the first one, when Carbon Capture USA moved to Alberta to take 75 cents on the dollar. 75% tax credits they're getting. And then the ability to tax our energy. So they've privatized all the profits, but they have spread the risks onto you, the taxpayer. So you're going to pay for their investment. And here's another one that's now coming to Alberta. And they're billing it. It's good news out there for Americans. One of their carbon capture firms has praised Canada's policy support. Policy support, read that as tax credits, 75 cents on the dollar. Policy support, 75 cents on the dollar. Your tax dollars. Policy support. As it gets started, on a project in Alberta. Imagine that, coming to Alberta. This is the CEO of Mantle Capture. He's going to join. Remember, Tim Hodgson touted Carbon Capture USA a few months back. Has the carrot and stick when it comes to controversial gas-bearing technology, CCUS. We need a way to do this. Frankly, that makes money for people that are putting their neck out and investing in these things. Carbon Capture USA said this technology is not feasible, not only not in the USA anymore, because they came from the USA, but anywhere in the world. Only where you can get 75 cents on the dollar. Canada, taxpayers are going to foot the bill for this. And then they're going to sell these credits to the energy companies. Basically, they're going to allow these private companies, American companies, to tax our energy. Because they're got this scheme where they suck carbon out of the air through filters, sequester it into these filters, put it in a truck it to a distant location, inject it into the ground, and then sell these credits. And there's already seen problems in the United States with some of these carbon capture technologies. That's why it's basically abandoned down there, where it's escaped. Imagine that, escaped from fissures in the ground and that. Like, it's just ridiculous.
And harmed people and harmed water supply, I believe, is the argument. And the place they want to build it in Alberta, at least one of them,
Pathways,
it's on a First Nations reserve, isn't it? They've already come out and said, no thanks, don't want that.
Just think any business, if you could get 75 cents on the dollar, you put in $1, the government gives you back 75 cents. Like a no-risk deal, right? Why wouldn't you come? And these are American companies. I thought it was by Canada.
Massachusetts based, yeah. But it's so, just that language really cracked me up. Where he says, we need a way to do this that makes money for the people that are putting their necks out. And it's like, oh, you brave soldier. putting your neck out to do this. Like
look at this headline, though.
massively subsidized.
Look at this headline from CTV. They're not saying U.S. firm comes to Canada to take 75 cents on the dollar, and it's U.S. Why are we funding American companies with Canadian tax dollars? Nope. It ticks all the
They make it
boxes.
seem like it's the next iPhone or something, don't they? It's like US firm backs Canada for technology investment or something. It's like, great, like what are we doing? Is it cars, self-driving cars, robots, something like that? It's like, no, we're going to tax people more and give that money to Americans who are then going to put some gas in the ground, and it will make zero effect. It will have no effect whatsoever on global CO2 emissions or methane emissions or anything like that. It will be so negligible. It basically, if you put it on a proper sized graph, it wouldn't even show up. It's not going to be visible. If you got a microscope, you might be able to see tiny little dent. That's what it really is. It's a completely futile exercise, isn't it? Again, let's return to Montreal and Stephen Guilbeault. That's who it's there to appease. That's who it's for.
But it is one heck of a very complicated tax scheme that allows basically private companies to offload all the risk onto the government and then tax our energy. Private companies can tax Canadian energy. And you've got to remember Mark Carney's speech at the UN. This is what he was talking about, where we're going to move investment from weak hands, the investment banks that are very angry when his net zero alliance fell apart, into strong hands, meaning you, the taxpayer, that doesn't ask for results or transparency or accountability. We've seen that over and over again. How much accountability have they shown with what they've done so far? 75 cents. And they call these super credits. I mean, in his budget, Mark Carney has called these super credits. Anyway, the big one out there is supply management. This one is going to get tested by the media. You know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this thing wouldn't even get the legs it's getting right now. Like a food professor drawing a ton of attention to this. He's probably drawn more attention to this supply management than most people. Because he says the people that pay for this is the consumer. Supply management is, again, policies that benefit the few, the dairy farmers, and some government officials for votes, but at the expense of the many. Like our milk is way more expensive, our cheese is way more expensive, everything. Again, policies that benefit the few at the expense of the many. And who are we getting to rush to the rescue for Canadians? Is it coming from America? But he says Ottawa's just going to write another check to dairy farmers in a way to subsidize it, kind of make everybody happy. That's his prediction.
But that's still that the Americans are still going to be upset about that, obviously, because that's propping up that's state support of an industry or sector of the economy. That's subsidizing a sector of the economy, which is a big no-no, according to none other than the World Trade Organization. You know, the most basic rules on maintaining most favored nation status and things like that. But I don't know, the Americans might like it if it's perceived as some kind of a concession, but that is still going to be very much state subsidized, isn't it? And that would give it an unfair advantage. This is what we whinge about with China, you know. This is what the Americans complain about with China all the time, because they pump money into all their industries and overproduce and all the rest of those nefarious practices.
I would advise people to go watch that full interview the food professor did. I think he did with CBC as well, on what supply management is and how it works before you like start throwing things. So I think some people attacked us last week and said that, what do we support? We don't support supply management. We don't support the monarchy. We don't support this, that. We're MAGA and blah, 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 blah. Dan Elmas put out this tweet, and this is because we talked about this. You can buy New Zealand beef cheaper than American beef. We already talked about it, so we won't dwell on it. And somebody else. But food prices in Canada, like if we go down a couple more, the inflation is true for sure. The 4.7 in Canada versus 1.9 in the United States. And if you go down there, and then of course people, when you see this, what is the argument that comes back? Oh, it's a Maple MAGA argument. And like a food professor, just the next slide. It's just a statement of fact. It's just facts.
But that's inconvenient, isn't it? But also, it's not just facts. Like, as we try and humanize it a lot, don't we? And that's crucial. it's not just about parties. It's not about Mark Carney's reputation or the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party. It's about people going into grocery stores and not buying food because it's too expensive because of the policy system that's in place. Like that's as far as I'm concerned, that's like the basic sort of expression of patriotism, isn't it? That you want your fellow citizen to be able to bloody eat food. You know what I mean? Is that not? Why turn that into something to do with Donald Trump or
These are
Mark Carney
things,
or whatever?
some of these things are things that we intentionally do. Industrial carbon pricing, none in the United States. We do that. We add that to our costs. Supply management, we add that, like milk and eggs and cheese, all more expensive here because of supply management. And dairy farmers dumping milk down the drain. And you talked about weak logistics and interprovincial trade barriers. That still, remember when they talked about that when this whole trade thing blew up, how they're going to remove all the trade barriers? How much of that is done? It was all performative for a couple of days, and then it basically all just went away. Not much has changed.
Well, they've done the federal aspects, haven't they? But the reality is that, as the name implies, interprovincial, it's to do with the provinces, and the provinces aren't going to budge unless, I mean, you got to put serious pressure on them, which only the Prime Minister could do and isn't doing. So therefore, they remain in place.
If anything, it's intensified. Alberta and BC definitely not getting along. Saskatchewan
No.
and Ontario and Alberta. You know what I mean? Like, who's getting along in this? Like, it's just getting worse. Manitoba.
Saskatchewan and Alberta get along
Yeah,
pretty well.
that's the
I mean,
two,
that's
yeah.
about it, isn't it?
That's about it. The food professor also put this out. We expect the number of restaurants in Canada to continue declining in 2026. We've seen that in Kelowna here too. We see restaurant closures. A lot of it to do with policy.
I mean, the Americans, like if you just look at their geography, we've said it many times, like, it's the most blessed in the world, isn't it? I mean, they have so many different growing zones, even like Florida and the Valley of California and stuff like that. They're in a much better spot in terms of producing food goes, so they should have cheaper food. But still, it's about looking at it relatively, and relatively even that they're doing better, aren't they, in food, which is what tells you, as Sylvain Charlebois mentions a lot, that it's a Canadian policy problem.
Policy. And then this guy asked the question, what's if structural bias in CBC news reporting could be quantified using standard lexical and framing analysis tools? So he used AI to ask some questions. Turns out there is a institutional viewpoint bias. Imagine that, right? And I just read the summary here. In short, in 2025, CBC RSS sample showed a very strong and consistent left progressive institutional bias, both in story selection agenda and framing interpretation. This is almost like you speaking. The outlet functions less of a neutral public broadcaster and more as an amplifier of the government. And that comes from one of the government offices saying the same thing. Public sector and social progressive narratives with a particular hostility reserved for Donald Trump, Canadian conservatives, and anything that could be construed as right-wing misinformation. Did I miss anything?
Well, just as an example, I don't think we played the clip, but Rosemary Barton asked about, she asked Carney in that interview, is there anyone that you wouldn't accept from the Conservative Party? And then she said, for example, somebody that's anti-abortion or anti-trans. Those are the terms that just immediately came to her head. I just have to ask, is there a single member of the Canadian Parliament who is anti-trans? Like, what does that mean? Anti-transgender people, or just hates transgender people, full stop? No more sophistication to it than that, because that's what it suggests. But in Rosemary Barton's head, what anti-trans really means is, like Danielle Smith trying to create sex-separated spaces. That's anti-trans in Rosemary Barton's head, in my opinion, which is a very much a left-wing radical perspective. The things like that, which makes me quite surprised, where it says in terms of social progressive terms, that's only 5% of articles. It seems like it's a lot more than that, because that it influences almost everything that they do and say, in my view. And it's not even picked up. You know, Rosemary Barton saying that isn't even picked up. It's not even a discussion point, because it's so normal, isn't it? It's just embedded in the psyche of the CBC.
So if social media, or especially X, didn't exist, CBC would feed you these narratives and you'd never learn these things. Because this weekend, the CBC and the mainstream media were doing their work to let you know that the colleges are suffering because of the curtailment of immigration. They don't tell you the rest of the story, and I put a post on LinkedIn. You know, remember old Paul Harvey, the American broadcaster, and he used to say, "And now for the rest of the story," and he would tell you what's behind the headlines there. But here it is: Canadian youth is beginning to struggle as stricter immigration policies have international students skipping Canada. And then this is out of the Conestoga College there. Just 2 days after that 200 faculty cuts, support staff now getting termination notice quietly over Zoom. Entire program is being cut. I'm going to play this small clip here for you.
It's happened again. More job cuts this week at Conestoga College. This time, more support staff getting layoff notices. Only 2 days after we learned that almost 200 faculty were being cut. CTV's Colton Weens is live with more. Colton, I know we're still waiting to get a handle on the numbers in terms of this newest support staff layoff round, but one of the union leaders telling us she's deeply angered by this.
Yeah, and Tony, the union, OPSU, also says it's tried to work with the college on ways to avoid cuts and increase revenue, but feel their efforts have been ignored. Today, more people learning their jobs are cut.
I was not allowed to have my camera on. I was not allowed to have my microphone on. And somebody read from a script saying that my position was being terminated.
Iain Jenkins says after nearly 3 years teaching at Conestoga College, he received an email around 10 this morning from Conestoga's Human Resources asking him to join a virtual meeting at 2:30. Jenkins says it was similar to how 180 support staff were laid off back in April, and he had a strong feeling about what was coming.
Less stressful if they had just sent me a video email first thing in the morning at 10 a.m., as opposed to making me wait 4.5 hours to basically have a video email anyway.
CTV News is still working to confirm how many support staff were laid off on Thursday. Vicky Poirievre, president of Ontario Public Service Employees Union 238, wrote an email to members today saying, "I am deeply angered by the decision made by Dr. John Tibbetts and senior leadership to send notices of layoff and reassignment during the holiday season." In an email to CTV News, the college did not reveal how many support staff were cut, but said these difficult but necessary decisions are not taken lightly and reflect our responsibility to align resources and ensure long-term sustainability. Earlier this week, they again...
What they failed to tell you that John Tibbetts there, this small college in Ontario, was the biggest benefactor or worst offender of the foreign student enrollment. Taking in over 40,000 students. He makes $640,000 a year, and in committee hearing, testified in a committee hearing that it wasn't about the money. And
I'm sure it wasn't.
Their operating
about education. It was about the knowledge.
Their operating surplus at the time went from $3 million to $252 million. Not about the money. It's a small
He's
college.
just a modern day Socrates. He just wants to inquire about the universe. That's all. It purely boils down to search for knowledge.
A small college, $640,000 a year, his annual salary. And then who paid the price for it? Who paid the price for this? Who paid the price? You did, with less access to health care. The youth paid it with high unemployment, higher rents, clogged roads, no access to school because it was full of people. And then this guy puts out this thing. He said, like their payroll was, and their enrollment was 89% in 2024. And then he's making a joke there. He's being sarcastic. Maybe they should just relocate overseas to be closer to its customers, which makes a lot of sense. There's a college in Canada here that was basically run for foreign students because of the money that it made. And this guy rewarded himself fatly with the $640,000 a year salary. And now who's paying the price for their choices, that the policy decisions they made in the past? The employees are paying the price. because it doesn't talk about John Tibbetts taking a wage cut or him getting fired for these poor choices in the past. But the media, not really going after this. This is all from Hollydone and Blacklocks and from committee hearings. This isn't what's the mainstream media. They don't say, oh, how did this happen? How were they making so much money off foreign students and all of a sudden this drop? And it wasn't like, like 10%, which, colleges could bear. Like, if, like 10% of foreign students and you lose, like it's down to 5%, you could probably say, oh, I could do that, right? But if like 89% of your enrollment, which is triple that what Canadians pay, is all of a sudden cut off. And you said you've taken Uber rides during the height of all this, and people who are here on foreign student visas there going to catering college. I don't even know what Conestoga College, what are some of the courses Conestoga College played at? We should take a look and see what they actually offer. Like, what kind of college was it?
I should add as well, that person that I was talking to didn't even speak English. That kind of sums it up, really. There's just no way that chap could have completed like a rigorous post-secondary qualification, because he wouldn't have been able to sit the exams or be instructed properly, But the thing is, I like to compare this to oil and gas, because we're always told by enemies of Canada's oil and gas industry that all of the costs are externalized in the form of like environmental damage or whatever, or emissions, that kind of thing. And they complain about that. And what they do is they call that, they say, look how heavily subsidized the oil and gas industry is. It's completely unreasonable. And yet, what is this? If not, it's just a massive externalization swindle, isn't it? Where all of the costs are spread out in the population, while they take all the money themselves. They take all of the benefits. I mean, and even colleges tend to have tax exemption as well, don't they? You would know all about that, being an accountant. Kind of like, whereas the oil and gas industry pays like hundreds of billions of dollars in tax revenue. What are these giving us? Like, what's the actual pro for us as a whole, rather than just these individuals on 650 grand a year? Like, where's the benefit for us? Like, we know the benefit with oil and gas. What about this? And the other thing is, somebody in the comments I was talking about saying they put all their eggs in one basket. That's another thing that the Stephen Guilbeaults of Canada like to say about Alberta, don't they? They say, oh, you need to diversify, put all your eggs in one. Like, there's no sympathy, is there, for the industry? They just say you've concentrated too much on that and now you're going to suffer. Will they apply that logic here? In a system that is kind of part of the Liberal coalition? I mean, I think not. So I think it's a good comparison, that, isn't it? Exposes a lot of people's silly ideology.
You have to go read all the committee hearing stuff. I suggest you subscribe to Blacklocks and then go into those committee hearings and get all the stuff. And some of the questions and answers that were there, like what it did to this small community for unemployment, for youth, Canadian youth that can't get a job because there's tons of foreign students in there. And then also the foreign students that were just like also filling up the food banks. Like, it's just all for the policies that benefit the few at the expense of the many, And the foreign students taking advantage of it, but they were being taken advantage of themselves. So who's the benefactor of this? It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. And here's another example of the same program, basically, in our fast food joints. Right now, A&W owners, this is, again, they try to use the media, but now with social media and X and that, they get pushback. A&W owners in Quebec warned they could close the restaurants or cut hours unless the federal government restores access to temporary foreign workers, arguing it becomes harder to find local staff willing to work in fast food joints. Again, policies that benefit the few at the expense of the many. So we're supposed to subsidize A&W's salaries because they want to pay cheap labor. They want to basically pay a minimum wage, and what the UN and organization says is basically modern day slavery. We're supposed to supplement that by how many Canadians don't have access to a family doctor? It's in the millions. How many stories have we done? People dying in waiting rooms. Many. How many people don't go to the doctor because they know they'll be sitting there for a day? These are the costs that you as Canadians pay because A&W doesn't want to pay a fair wage. I can tell you right now, if they're paying $17 an hour and no Canadian kid wants to go there, pay 18, pay 19. At some point, you'll find people that are willing to work there. But it's
you know, and still, if you can't succeed, if you still can't
closed.
entice them, then I guess we'll just have to do without A&W there. That's fine, you know, because this is something, again, this is massive externalization. It affects all of us, but we don't get a say in it, do we? I mean, the alternative would be, why don't we have a referendum? You know, should we continue to pump the labor market
but even
with the cheapest possible staff so that a small group of people in Canada can eat every day or something like that? It's like, we got to get a balance right. We've got to like get our priorities right.
And then the other thing that they pulled the sheet back a little bit so you could see a little bit underneath Tim Hortons and see what the actual drivers are. So Tim Hortons sold, a franchisee sold 4 of his franchises to another person. What was the first thing that person did? Fired all the long-term staff that were at that Tim Hortons for 10 years. Fired them all. Fired them all so they could replace them with temporary foreign workers. That he said that's the only people they can get. Tim Hortons got, you know, like backlash for it, and Tim Hortons forced them to hire back the staff they fired. How long will they work there with pressure, you know what I mean? Because you know what the end goal is.
Yeah. In related breaking news, the next ambassador, so probably the most important diplomat in Canada, the next ambassador to the US is going to be Mark Wiseman, as was heavily sort of forecast. Yeah. Mark Wiseman being the guy who founded the organizer, the Century Initiative, which wanted to promote 100 million people, 100 million population for Canada by the year 2100. Presumably, half of those 100 million people working at A&W for 50 cents an hour.
Unbelievable. And, you know, people, like I said, people starting to push back on this now. Again, social media helping in that regard. And that's why I think, you know, like Mark Carney and the Liberals have said many times, how X is a source of misinformation and disinformation. Excuse me, Prime Minister, the source of misinformation, disinformation comes right from the CBC and your party.
Well, and his own mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that earlier where you talking about 30% of you know, emissions contributing to a warming global climate come from methane? What is that if not, you know, an attempt to mislead people? And he often does it. He often misleads. It comes from the very top. And it's like, sometimes they will mislead. We saw this, didn't we? We've seen this a number of times. Sometimes they'll mislead or literally sort of promulgate misinformation in one sentence. Then the next sentence, the immediately following sentence, is complaining about misinformation.
Yeah. That's how you
do when it's that crazy?
That's how you make your fact even better. You put out misinformation, then complain about misinformation at the same time.
Yeah. And then nobody can get you back.
And somebody put this out. I used to eat a lot of fast food, and I changed my eating habits about 7 years ago. Lost 50 pounds and kept it off. Yeah, if you can avoid fast food, do so. And you know, like right now, you need to send a message to Tim Hortons and A&W for what they're doing to Canadian youth, and they're expecting you to pay the wages through subsidizing their cheap labor plans. Here's this Well Civil put out thing. Condos got a little bit cheaper since 2022, and the median price of condo in Canada slid by 21%. But that's after, like, you know, skyrocketing too. Like 2020 just saw prices go through the roof here. So maybe this is a bit of normalizing. But Toronto really suffering, and so is Vancouver right now with tons of unsold condos. They're even talking, I saw it on Bloomberg this morning, they're going to lift the foreign buying rules so that foreigners can now start buying property again. I mean, that's the discussion that's starting to happen.
But again, once again, here we have a chart that shows an exponential increase in something after the year 2015. Is that just statistics in Canada now? Is it like 2015 is like the new sort of AD, isn't it? It's like BC and AD, but in Canada it's 2015. That's when things just like every single chart, it's either dramatically up or dramatically down, whichever one is bad.
You know what is even skyrocketing? Which one that skyrocketed the most in Canada? cost per viewer for the CBC. Cost per viewer, as they have 1.55 billion, and Numeris said their viewership is in the toilet. And then so the cost per viewer, it might even get to $1 million per viewer. Imagine that. No wonder that the people that watch
that would be great.
No wonder that the people that watch the CBC are just crazy shills for the CBC, because, you know, like, although they likely get none of that money, they just don't realize it. But this is a big one that we've been talking about forever. We used to do a lot of market stuff on here. Crypto and tech stocks, breaking up crypto, having a tough time, Bitcoin having a tough time, but tech stocks on a tear. I think this might be the biggest opportunity. I mean, I'm a big technology fan, and I believe we're sitting at the precipice, or the beginning. We're just at the beginning, inning one, of the biggest change that has ever happened in our lifetimes, and maybe in the world, since the invention of fire. I know that sounds a little crazy to some people, but it is what it is. And one of my favorites.
Well, it's not too ridiculous, is it? Because fire is energy ultimately, isn't it? And that was like a new way of creating and using energy, which revolutionized everything. What we're experiencing now is kind of like the electrification of everything, isn't it? That's another way to look at it.
Imagine if.
So it is kind of similar.
Imagine if Stephen Gabot was around at the invention of fire. He would have dumped a bucket of cold water on that and said, "Stop that."
Have you seen the squirrels? Did you see how upset that squirrel is? Like, don't be stupid. You're gonna
stop that right now. Stop that right now. Another big. We talk about this a lot, and I've also been a big fan of it ever since the first Iraq War. Desert Storm, gold. Gold and silver hit new highs, and silver is like on fire. Silver banging on the door of 70. Who would have thought? You know, it was $7 not too long ago. Silver banging on the door of $70. And part of the reason that Canada's exports are higher. And again, gold in our resource sector here treated like almost like Alberta, like the dirty cousin. Takes 20 years to get a mine from going from, like, you know, exploration to permitting for a mine in Canada. And we've seen that, like that 2017 project that they were touting that they were going to fast track. That was already approved in 2017. Just count the years. How many years is that? It's still sitting there. It's already approved in 2017. Anyway, let's watch a little bit of this, how it explains how we had a better trade numbers because of our shiny substance here in Canada.
Hitting Canadian trade hard this year. The data tells a surprising story. Canada's export earnings are actually up. So where is the money coming from? CBC's senior data producer Nael Shiab explains.
It's been a topsy-turvy year for Canada thanks to US President Donald Trump's tariffs. Those levies are roughly between 10 to 50% on non-CUSMA products. It's making Canadian goods like aluminum, oil, steel and lumber more expensive for American companies to buy, so they buy less of them. But so far this year, our global domestic exports are up by almost $1 billion. So if we're being snubbed by our biggest trade partner, where is all of this money coming from? Before I spill the source behind the jump, let's have a look at everything Canadian provinces are exporting around the world. In this data visualization, each dot represents products worth $1 million. When the dots are yellow, it means this country or state bought more this year compared to last. The purple dots mean less was bought. For example, here's British Columbia, which exported around $250 million more this year to the Middle East and Central and South America, but around $650 million less to Europe and Asia. On the other side of the country, Nova Scotia exported $100 million more in 2025 to Europe and Africa, but $140 million less to Asia. Let's talk about Ontario, which accounts for almost half of all Canadian exports. There's one product in particular that increased our exports to the UK so much that it compensated for our losses in this trade war. What is this money-making product? Gold. its price skyrocketed by over 60% in 2025, and as a result, exports of gold alone brought in $9.7 billion more than last year. While the majority of the gold sold in 2025 went to the UK, Ontario also exported billions of dollars worth of gold to several US states, $4.6 billion more than last year to be exact. The crazy thing is that in quantities, Canada actually exported less gold this year than last, but because of the price increase,
That's good. That's good. Guess how many ounces of gold in the Canadian Reserve?
We've sold it all. Sold it all to the Americans.
0. We sold most of it. I think around the same time you're talking about. I think 2016 or something like that. That was the end of our gold. We sold
Probably
it
now very cozy in Fort Knox.
We sold it. I think the last of it around $1,200, because we said gold was an antiquated asset and not worth it. Tiff Macklin just said those words. He was interviewed months ago here and said, why don't we have any reserves? And he said that gold doesn't earn interest. It just earns the interest of people because gold has been skyrocketing. Gold has been on fire.
I mean, who needs it? Yeah, who needs interest when prices go up as much as they do with gold?
The two biggest reserve currencies in the world, the US dollar, which gives them all their military might, and the shiny substance called gold. Those two things, not Canadian dollars. You know what we hold in our reserve currency? Not gold, US T-bills. I thought they were the devil. Crazy world.
I mean, not only that, but talk about Tiff Macklin. Can you imagine Tiff Macklin daring to make any decision of significance at all without, long study of the US Federal Reserve? The reality is that he's almost like a kind of satellite branch of the Federal Reserve. It's absurd, isn't it? This idea that we can be independent or completely separate from the United States. It's not possible. It's completely deluded.
I do want to mention something because this is what's said a lot of times. Trudeau didn't start selling gold. He's finished it off. But here's the thing. Around 2015, central banks around the world, there was a consensus in many central banks that gold was an antiquated asset, that it needed to be sold off. It no longer had the value that it used to have. But around that time, we started to see geopolitical tensions, the Greece debt crisis and different things starting to happen. And central banks started accumulating gold. And that accumulation of gold by central banks has been accelerating. That's why we're seeing these huge price increases in gold. But Canada did not buy into that. Most nations were buying gold. So, like person's right and wrong all at the same time. And if you go look at central bank buying and selling, you'll see that back then there was a lot of selling up until that point. Canada just never got the memo. Imagine that. Let's talk about election though too. Some election stuff blowing in the wind here. But here's an interesting fact, and this is Jolie talking about it too. Let's listen to her about the Quebec referendum.
I was looking at public opinion polling that showed, a precipitous drop since the last month for the Liberals to the advantage of the PQ. And I think a lot of Canadians right now are wondering what that means for the future of Quebec's sovereignty. Are you, Minister, worried about a referendum?
I take extremely seriously the fact that the PQ government is ahead in the polls and that the head of the PQ has clearly stated that within a year of his new mandate that he would indeed call a referendum for the separation of Quebec. As a federal politician that has been on the front lines of this issue for years, this would not be not only to the benefit of Quebecers, but this would have an impact also on our entire economy. And so I will make sure that the Federalist views and the importance of being part of Canada is well heard, and I'll work with my cabinet colleagues, but this is certainly something that I will be dedicating a lot.
I mean, if there was no Quebec in Canada, the Liberals would likely never win another election, and people like Melanie Joly would never have any power.
Yep, because they wouldn't want her in Quebec either. She's only possible in the context of Quebec being represented in Canada as a whole, isn't she? That's her only niche. And there are so many people like her, the bilingual 18% or so of the population. They have such a strong incentive to want to keep the status quo because their entire livelihoods are connected to that. But I mean, I get this guy here is from Alberta, isn't he? And I assume he's probably not really a fan of Quebec being in Canada to start with. But I feel like a lot of people who are maybe in the middle, like neutral on this question, if it really started to dominate the headlines again, I'm convinced that people are just they've got so much Quebec fatigue that they would just kind of say, like, bugger off then, please, bugger off. And that's like, we were looking at that, weren't we? Another story where there was a prediction that Quebec separatism is going to dominate 2026, 2027. I think that's really, it's looking like it's definitely going to happen because it looks like the PQ
But
are going to win big in Quebec.
If the PQ win, that'll be the provincial party, and then also align with Blanchette, who's stated that all the time. That's what he ever talks about. And like the critics of Quebec being in Canada is that Quebec raids most of Canada, and Scott Moe and Danielle Smith have said this for a long time that they transfer payments, and then if they raise, I don't know if I put it in here, but if they raise their hydropower, which they have the lowest hydropower in Canada, by 2 cents a kilowatt hour, that they wouldn't qualify for transfer payments. Imagine that.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things like that. The equalization system, it's not because Quebec is like extraordinarily poor or anything like that. That's nonsense. The reason it happens is because of the way they've structured their economy. It's a policy choice.
Oh.
And I just want to lastly say, CTV misspelled the word referendum on that graphic there. I'm not impressed. CTV, Canada's biggest news outlet, can't even spell a simple word. I'm not happy about it.
So I remember when CTV covered this, the first Michael Maw demonstration. It looks like it's growing, but the CTV said, and there's a handful of people here. The handful is growing. I think the petition has 37,000 plus now on it for Michael Maw to resign. Play a small clip of it here, but it's very quick, like 10 seconds maybe. Michael Maw! Resign! Michael Maw! Resign! Michael Maw! Resign! Michael Maw! Resign! There you go, that's good.
They need a new chant, don't they? Can't be having that. Michael Maw! Doesn't work.
And then it doesn't look like the CTV could go there and do their anyway, we'll just leave it. I was going to say something, but I'll just leave it. But there's a petition that says, face the voters there. Parliamentary floor clauses would face a mandatory by-election or commons petition sponsored by MP Leanne Rod, and that's from Ontario. I mean, they've tried this several times. Floor crossing in the aftermath of last elections was raising concerns of opportunism over principle, wrote the petitioners. MPs are elected to represent their constituents under a party banner. And unrestricted floor crossings can erode voter trust amid rising political corruption scandals. I mean, that's just obvious, right? 27,000 people silenced by one person that has a backdoor meeting and then decides to flip parties. Like, what happens to the 27,000 people that voted for a blue sign? It's not like Michael Maw was this big, like face that's well known. He was a nobody, and all of a sudden, he goes into a room just days after scorching the earth with the Liberal Party policies, and then comes back out and has found a new religion and crosses over. And it's not like it doesn't make a difference. That's the thing. It makes a difference. It makes a difference, right? So obviously, this is something that should be looked at. I mean, they've tried to run this a few times, but
And I'm getting a bit sick now of Poilievre being, when he's being interviewed, being told by Vassie Capellas or Rosemary Barton or whatever, that the same thing has happened loads of times in the other direction, where Liberals have come over to Conservatives. It's like, that's just exactly the same thing. But Poilievre keeps trying to get the point across that the people who defected, the examples that they're citing of Liberals that defected to the Tories, they were already unhappy, and it was on policy grounds, and they were saying, I don't like the deficit. I don't like this. You know, they were already at odds with.
Or they were kicked out. Some of them were kicked out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it was a real thing. It wasn't this phony kind of oh, Poilievre's a bully or something. I don't like the way he speaks. I don't like his and that just comes out of absolutely nowhere. Where like, you know, Michael Maher's the most hilarious example where he's like given these firebrand speeches completely like denouncing the Liberals as creating a new kind of serfdom. Then he goes to the Christmas party and all that with the Tories, and then the next day he's a Liberal MP. Like that's really hard to. How do you justify that? And he's a complete like newbie, isn't he? He's just turned up, just got there to the House of Commons. Like there are differences, there are defections that make sense where they. And this is what Poilievre said. Poilievre said sometimes it feels like leaves you kind of thing. Like you've kept your basic principles, whatever they may be, but the party's like gone to the left or to the right and has disappeared. Michael Maher can't make that claim because he only just joined, you know, he only just became an MP. So clearly he's completely on board with Poilievreism or whatever you want to call it. It's just, it's transparently opportunistic, isn't it? And it's not based on principles. And I think that's obvious. I think that's pretty clear, isn't it? And there was some polling done that suggests that that's what Canadians at large think, that they're not impressed by this. They're not happy about it.
Well, Elections Canada is getting a sniff, I think. Elections Canada ordering millions of ballot box seals in case of a 26 election. That's from a spokesman. It would be the fourth national campaign in 7 years. The agency says it must be prepared to deliver elections and by-elections at any time. And it required 6.9 million seals used to prevent tampering of ballot boxes. They did an abysmal job in the last election. Like, I mean, still, that court case, what's the outcome of that one vote that they made a mess out of?
Yeah, it's still going through. That's another interesting one, obviously, vis-a-vis Quebec, because it was the Quebec separatists that lost by one vote. Right. So we've had this conversation lots of times, haven't we, where we say it undermines faith in democracy. I think that's just a given, but it's particularly sensitive, isn't it, if you think about it in the context of Quebec separatism, because it's the Quebec separatists who already don't like Canada. They already want to undermine it and undermine the institutions. So they see something like this, and it's like it gives them a rallying cry. I just think the Liberals have mishandled that massively. They should have absolutely called an immediate by-election, even just in self-interest, to try and scare off the separatists and say, look, because we believe in democracy, we're going to do it. We're going to have a by-election. But you know, they thought better of that.
And just in case you thought he went away, here's a familiar face that was. He couldn't get the stench of Justin Trudeau off him, unlike the Liberals, who seemed to have shaken it off there to win the election. But the New Democrats fell apart, and in their final report on the 2025 election campaign, conclude the party was too closely linked to Justin Trudeau and out of touch with taxpayers. Who could have told them that? Who could have told them that? Out of touch with taxpayers. Wow. The report did not single out then leader Jagmeet Singh for specific criticism. What? Like that's, it's indisputable that the conservative messaging on jobs and identity is resonating with many workers. Like they were so disconnected. The Liberals were disconnected. Trudeau was disconnected. Jagmeet Singh, like they were oblivious. They would just say anything. And again, the media did not hold them to account. They just allowed them to say anything that would tear down the Conservatives was A-okay. And isn't that what Jagmeet Singh, that he wasn't? Because when Poilievre looked like he was going to win, he said, I wouldn't do that. I would sacrifice the party before I would let Poilievre win an election.
Yeah, I mean, this is the strange thing about it. I mean, he always reserved like his most venomous, bitter hatred for the Conservative Party, even when the Liberals were harming his constituency, like his coalition. So when there was unrest among the NDP faithful about the Liberals, he still just wanted to lash the Conservatives, didn't he? Because that's what he is, isn't he? I'm more than being an NDP guy. He's just a anti-conservative guy.
Well,
that's like his main brand.
His exact quote: "I could not stomach the idea of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives forming a majority government. I know that was going to be bad for his party." Yeah, it was bad. You destroyed your own party. Jack Layton would not be proud of you, Jagmeet Singh. And this is how public opinion and the media here in Canada, the media landscape, other than us, you could help us by sharing, subscribing, liking, and sharing this with your friends and giving us a bigger voice. Media's job is to hold power accountable, and the CBC and CTV are not doing that job. But look at this. This poll, they seem to be jamming it down people's people that we should be getting the Gripen instead of the F-35. Is this how we're going to build our military? Around polls? Not because what's a better jet?
Well, we already govern our democracy according to polls, so why not military procurement as well?
I mean,
Might as well.
There's
It's the
enough.
equivalent of like the oracles in ancient Greece, isn't it? Where you just go and ask some like woman that's high on mushrooms or acid or whatever, like, what should I do? Should I invade Persia?
There's enough studies out there, and that the F-35 is like one of the top jets still being used as the war machine, and by most of the countries out there. The Gripen is rarely used, and you know, like they pick one stat. It can land on roads in northern Alberta. Okay, like that'll come in handy. It's not a stealth jet. That's what comes in handy when you're fighting in a war. A stealth jet, not one that can.
Well,
land
they did an internal assessment, didn't they?
Yeah.
The Department of Defense, and found out that what everybody already knows, that the F-35 is loads better than the Gripen. But
that's what I mean. But we're going to buy this likely because of public opinion here, because of the hatred that the CBC and the CTV and the Liberals are driving into Canadians over the Americans. And then this is a reminder on conservative. Well, we won't even talk about that. You know, Poilievre says he's going to scrap the plastic ban, but here, lo and behold, the Environment Minister Julie Dabsarin on Saturday served legal notice. Cabinet will again allow the manufacture of straw and other plastic goods in Canada, but only for export to the United States. So we can make them, we can't use them. That's saving the planet, right? It's like comedy. Like you can't even, an appeal of the 2023 ruling by the federal judge, because Poilievre said that it's costing jobs, 60,000 jobs, plus it's, you know, like cost the inflation. Maybe we should play that clip. Let's go back and play that clip so you understand what his point was. Let's play that clip, and then we'll go to Julie Dabsarin there.
Conservatives will bring change. We will axe the Liberal food packaging tax to save families $400 on groceries and to save 60,000 Canadians their jobs. We will repeal the federal...
That's good. So now we go, and then so... They're going to scrap the, they're going to allow the manufacture of straw and other plastic goods in Canada, but only to export it to the United States. So we'll keep the jobs, but Canadians can continue to pay the extra money per year because they can't use them. Who comes up with this logic?
the Liberal Party, they specialize in it. This is not too dissimilar to a lot of their environmental policies, though. And to be fair, you also see this in a uniquely Liberal Party disease.
So they could say now that the sea turtles, because of the plastic ban there, I lost the monitor. The sea turtles, it will just blame it on the Americans for killing the sea turtles.
All we did is sell it to them.
Yeah. Can you check the monitor? Like the back of your computer there? Yeah, it's just ridiculous, right? Not every plastic manufacturer has the potential to create a reasonable apprehension or harm, wrote the court. This is different from examples such as lead and carbon dioxide. And there it is, it's back. That's where the problem is. Okay, there you go. Does it make sense to you?
Do you see as well, there's a quote from Guilbeault here when he introduced the ban and talked about it as an example of global leadership. Right. I think for a lot of them, that's what they honestly think that the leaders in Vietnam, the Vietnamese Communist Party in Hanoi, that they see this pop up on the internet and it's like, oh, right. Okay, so Canada's introduced this ban. Wow, let's follow Canada. Canada's the one to imitate. Like, as if there is any country in the world that looks to Canada for guidance on anything. It's just such an extraordinary fantasy that the likes of Stephen Guilbeault and sadly Mark Carney indulge in. Canada is not looked at as a tutor by anyone. I'm sorry to say, it's just not the case.
Oh, we're going to skip the next story because just in the interest of time here. But Big Red, on his way home, the Chris Barber won that lawsuit where they were trying to confiscate his big truck. And we're going to actually have Chris Barber and John Carpay on Wednesday. The Christmas Eve. You get a Christmas present back. Look, it looks like it's a Christmas all lit up for Christmas too. But he got his truck back after years. You know what I mean? It's like wild, eh?
Yeah, I mean, what kind of is that going to start? Like, what's the situation going to be with that mechanically?
Maybe it's going to be full of like the plastic straw thing. It just blows me away. So Canadians can't use plastic straws, but we'll sell them to the Americans.
And the Americans might then sell them to someone else. It's like spread the love.
It's amazing. Let's move on to BC News, though. We got a little bit to get through here.
Live from the Now Media Newsroom.
David Eby and his policy is making the Wall Street Journal like big deal. He's a big guy, big deal. Property owners in BC scrambling for options after courts and Indigenous groups have a right to reclaim ownership of land taken from them scores of years ago. This thing's getting a lot of play as Canada, again, getting some press that we may not want, because this does not help investment into Canada, especially into British Columbia.
No, and talking about Canada as a world leader and an inspiration to other countries, I said that doesn't really happen, but there is a little bit of that happening in a negative way, isn't there? Where the British, for example, like Britain, which is a mess, as we discuss often, in Britain, the British right particularly looks at Canada as a kind of morality tale. It's like a what not to do. And I feel like that's what the Wall Street Journal is doing here. It's trying to tell its audience, primarily American, that it's like, this is what can happen if you're as bad, if you're as stupid as Canada. This is the kind of thing that you can inflict on your citizens.
Yeah, and I've interviewed Jeffrey Moyse 4 times. I believe he's coming on again. We were setting up a time here. And, you know, like Eby as backstop, he says he's going to backstop $150 million. The estimate is from the Vancouver Sun article, it's $1 billion. And when I talked to Jeffrey Moyse, he said it's in the trillions. And that's from Keith Wilson, another lawyer here. You put that next one up. It's more than $100 billion. All of BC real estate is worth $2.83 trillion, and over 90% of BC's land base is unceded and subject to Aboriginal title claims. Where's Canada get $2.83 trillion?
It's absolutely insane, isn't it? I think one of our delightful commenters has just called for my deportation.
Nice.
Said that I'm a crooked-toothed British goof.
You have crooked teeth?
Who do you think invented Canada, mate? The British. Maybe you should get out.
You know when they start going after your looks that they have really strong arguments, right? That's the good one.
Especially my pearly whites. Cheeky bugger.
But hey, why just have these titles being challenged by Canadians? Why not have some American Indigenous groups challenged as well? A federal judge has dismissed a bid by a U.S. Indigenous group to delay expansion of the Port of Vancouver, the largest in the nation. However, the federal court sidestepped a larger question whether Indigenous Americans from border states have rights in Canada. That's again from Holly Doan's at Blacklocks, right? The Lumi Nation of Bellingham, Washington challenged a port expansion what it claimed to be ancestral lands of Point Roberts Peninsula near Delta, short drive from the U.S. border. And owed a duty to consult, but failed to do so, lawyers told the court. Cabinet in 23 approved the construction of a new shipping terminal by the Vancouver Port Authority. Lawyers for the Lumi Nation argued the group received only cursory consultation from the Canadian government. The court dismissed the complaint. Consultation was adequate. But Lumi Nation also claimed and asserted but unproven Aboriginal rights to Canada. This is not going away. This is what this is basically about. None of this is going away. Lumi claims that it is an Aboriginal society that at the time Europeans contact and before there was an international border used and occupied a traditional territory that is now Canada. It wrote to court, and as such, Lumi claims to be Aboriginal people of Canada with the rights that are recognized and affirmed under the Constitution Act.
It's astonishing.
David
and it's
Eby.
only it's like we're talking about BC and AD. it's only about European settlement, isn't it? There's no recognition of the fact that we have pretty solid evidence that a lot of these tribes now who are making these claims about their ancestral lands, they also stole and colonized land and enslaved their enemies and in some cases exterminated them, as humans tend to do and have always done throughout history. But there is no attempt from those nations to sort of sue the Lummi nation, is there? It's only ever when the word European comes into it, which I think tells you pretty much everything that you need to know.
This is the smiliest face I've seen on David Eby in a long time in this picture here. David Eby says he's not going to seek an election in 2026 because I know he thinks that it will not go well for him. Like, so he's going to wait for this storm to kind of like quell, but it doesn't look like it. I mean, there's so many pots on the BC stove that are overflowing, and this one is one of the biggest pieces of uncertainty because like investment in BC and him saying he's going to back, because people can't go mortgages right now, deals are falling through, all kinds of things are happening. Even people buying real estate in Kelowna, I've heard that they're pausing. They're just like, not till BC settles what's going on. How long is that going to be? When? We got a little bit of an international.
No prospect, is there?
We got a little bit of international news for you here.
Live from the Now Media Newsroom.
More pressure on Venezuela, and the Americans have seized a third Venezuelan oil tanker as they strangle the like the source of revenue for Maduro there. I don't know if they're trying to force his hand. I think Maduro wants them to have a land incursion, which I don't think the Americans are willing to do. Like you got your nose bloodied every time you try to do one of these land incursions. I think they're just trying to force pressure on Maduro to leave so that there is no bloodshed.
Yeah, I mean, their oil industry is absolutely pathetic. Anyway, I think they're getting less than 1 million barrels a day out now, which is like absolutely nothing considering their reserves. But like, I guess the sort of meager trade they do is primarily in oil, so it's a hit them. But they're in such a desperate state, aren't they? There's kind of a fine line between trying to chase out an evil government and inflicting pain on the population as a whole. So I would just hope that our American friends can tread that line with care.
Well, we're going to work on our mics and audio here over the Christmas break for sure. And somebody did ask about your sweater as well.
Yeah, a few people have. It's Tommy Wiseau. That's who it is. So you can go and read about him.
So here's
my best mate. I've met him a couple of times.
Here's your Christmas plan if you're wanting to make some extra cash for Christmas. Go down to the United States, claim asylum, and now they're giving $3,000 if you get out by December 31st. So you go down there, claim asylum, and they'll give you $3,000 to get out. Rip up your paperwork, and then say you're claiming asylum in Canada, and then you're going to get all kinds of cash. And probably a job at A&W. Winning. That's what winning looks like. So anyway, they've upped their, they said they've gotten over 1 million people leave on this $1,000 thing. And now they're tripling it for probably make the people that left for $1,000 and like, where's my extra $2? Sneak back in and get
in some Scandinavian countries, I think Denmark or Sweden or somewhere, they give like quite a lot of money. I think, like 5 figures they give to get rid of people. Yeah, so they're going to have to up their offer.
Many nations now are what you call it, doing reverse migration. Only Donald Trump gets the notoriety, though, from the left-leaning media as the fascist or whatever they want to call him. Trump appoints a special envoy. You know what that we didn't put it in here? The Tim Walz. That fraud now is over like $8 billion. They say now in Minnesota, related to money being funneled to Somalia.
I saw somewhere that it. I didn't actually follow up and check, but I saw somewhere that it has since surpassed the entire
GDP of
Somalia.
Somalia. Yeah, like
Yeah.
they're making more money off the American welfare system than they were off the GDP of actually Somalia.
It looks like it might be right. I'm just Googling here, and apparently in 2025, their GDP was $13 billion. So that, which is like, that blows one's mind.
So Donald Trump, meanwhile, has Greenland in his sights once again. This is again from a media outlet, the BBC. Take that with a grain of salt. The U.S. president has appointed the governor of Louisiana as a special envoy to Danish territory, causing yet more consternation in Copenhagen. You know who's, maybe they could meet up with Chrystia Freeland, the special envoy to Ukraine, who has a $4.5 billion bag of cash there that she can dole out. I wonder how much money this guy gets. I doubt if he's
Maybe
got...
she can buy a peninsula on Greenland or something like that, so we can have a bit of it as well.
A lot of people angry about Elon Musk got that pay package. The Supreme Court of Delaware, I like how they use this photo. The Supreme Court of Delaware reversed that decision where they took away his pay package. And people don't understand this pay package. His older pay package where unless he met the goals, which were audacious and nobody said he would ever meet them, he got 0. And if he met the goals, he got $56 billion. And then the Delaware court took it away from him and awarded, I don't know, like tens of millions of dollars to the law firm that brought the court case. It was just absolutely crazy. Lots of corporations moved out of Delaware, and then it took a while to get through the court system, and then the final decision came down that the shareholders voted for this twice. They reaffirmed it. Like they did a second vote on it to say, like, did you really want this? And it even passed with more approval than it did the first time around.
But it does seem insane. But well, there are numerous ways of looking at this to make it seem easier to swallow. But I'd say the main way to look at it is he assigns himself such insane targets that like don't even seem humanly possible, and then he achieves them and gets this money. It's kind of, and when he achieves those targets, shareholders obviously cash in big time, so they consider it a good deal, don't they? I mean, and the other way to look at it is it's completely consensual. Like the parties want this to happen, so it just seems quite odd to go in and say, no, actually, this can't happen. Like there's someone you forgot to ask.
And it's not like he does like some of the other billionaires where he buys boats and islands and stuff like that. He lives very meagerly, and for the money he has, and he just, to him, it's, I mean, they had the author of his book up there on CNBC this morning, and just saying it to him, it's just like it's a goal, and he has this it's like a game. He needs to get to the next level. So,
well, he talks about wanting it so that he can go to Mars, doesn't he?
The ultimate goal for him is to get to Mars, and he needs the money that he does through all these other ventures to get to Mars. So Tesla is a vehicle to get to Mars.
I'm sure ego will come into it as well. Like these people do like to think that they're number one, don't they?
Well, here you go. Here's your other ego. He's got a little bit more ego. He's got a little more biceps too, and his wife's got a little more Botox. Jeff Bezos, the new $11 billion massive data center campus in St. Joseph County, Indiana. 2.2 gigawatts of power. That's enough to power 1 million homes, and that's the Amazon data center there. You know, Alexa's as dumb as a stick, right? You know, when you ask
They
Alexa,
just improved it recently, but it is still dumb. Yeah.
It's like Siri and Alexa, like they are like that. They were out there first, but they are so dumb, and so they're going to need about
Google
9 of
Google
these.
managed to save itself, so
yeah. But yeah, Google introduced its first thing was super woke, right? And it was just like putting out stuff that was just absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And Japan, definitely putting money into its military. I'm going to play a little clip here. If it's got music, you can kill the music. But Japan's showing off some of its might as it rebuilds its navy. What's that? Yeah, so it's, so Japan, which after the Second World War was a pacifist power, but now it is starting to build up its navy because it feels that threat. Also acquiring Tomahawk missiles. That's the one that Zelensky wanted from Trump. He wanted some Tomahawks, but Japan has Tomahawks. And they also have a lot of subs and warships. Japan's largest warships, Izumo and Kaga, being transformed into carrier-capable platforms for carrying what jet fighter? You want to guess? Nope, not
That
the
must be the
Gripen.
Gripen.
No, no. The F-35B stealth fighter. They should come to Canada and read some of the clips on the Gripen. I'm sure they'll get talked into the Gripen.
Japan, though, so people say, like military analysts, experts, they consider the Japanese Navy to be considerably stronger than China's Navy, which is like amazing, isn't it?
They take stuff
frankly,
serious.
Yeah.
They take stuff serious. I was just in Japan, Tokyo. Absolutely unbelievable. And you got to go if you have not been to Japan. That's how you do things right. The largest city in the world, no visible homelessness, no visible drug problems, no graffiti, no nothing. And you could eat off the subway. And I'll tell you right now, if the train or the subway says it's coming at 10:27, you better not be late because it's leaving right a minute after that. And it's absolutely incredible and a very respectful culture as well. Very, very well done. If you have not been there, you should go and see when our politicians stand up there and said, this is a worldwide problem, not in Japan. And David Eby, good luck and Wab Canoe in Manitoba. You're in luck. The Americans are scrapping their windmills, and you can get some in a garage sale now. It's because they remember Wab Canoe and David Eby are going to get together and build this massive wind farm. But let's play this clip here from Doug Burgum.
Today, we're sending notifications to the 5 large offshore wind projects that are under construction that they're going to be their leases will be suspended due to national security concerns. During this time of suspension, we'll work with the companies to try to find a mitigation. But we've completed the work that President Trump has asked us to do. The Department of War has come back conclusively that the issues related to these large.
So they're tearing down the windmills, and they say they were a threat to national security. And Donald Trump says they kill birds.
They do. They certainly do. But, I mean, the argument against them, I think that's what this Eric Doherty person is trying to say. That one of the biggest arguments against them is that they take up so much land compared to, for example, a nuclear power plant, which is like such a tiny little square of land to generate the same amount of energy as all of those wind turbines. To me, that seems a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, it's different in a country like Canada or Russia or the US. Like, there's a lot of land. But when I see like the British and the Germans going gung-ho on turbines, it's like you haven't got any land to start with. Why do you want to do this? It's absolutely mad.
And the other thing they have to do, if it's like super windy, like heavy winds, they have to like shut them down. Otherwise, they'll just disintegrate.
Yeah.
And
well, that happened in Texas, didn't it? Where they got loads. They got absolutely massive amounts of them in Texas, and that happened not so long ago, didn't it?
Yeah. So again, like I said, for David Eby, here's your opportunity. You can go down there and you can buy these things, and you can buy as many as you want, probably.
Yeah. I mean, not to mention as well the fact that they aren't, they're not reliable, are they? You don't know how much power you're going to get day to day like that. And there's no way to store them en masse yet. I mean, that's the obvious flaw that they have.
I think that what they could do is retrofit these onto our diesel subs. You got a periscope and an energy generator all at the same time.
Oh, why not just get sails? Screw that. Just like go back to the old technology and have a submarine with sails.
Okay, you know what we're going to do in the new year? We're going to put up a clock on how many days the Liberal government's been in power and what's been accomplished so far, so that we can kind of keep a running total. Because 9 months, we don't even have a decision on a pipeline. Not even a decision. Because do you know, can you tell from what we've heard from Mark Carney and the Liberals, are we doing a pipeline or not?
Well, it depends, of course, on First Nations and the BC Coast, BC government. Look, Rosemary. That's all. That's about it from Mark Carney, isn't it?
Okay, I'm going to ask you in French there. Are we going to have a pipeline or not?
No.
See? In French, you might get the answer you want, right?
Yeah. No, I think the thing is, when the actual plan comes in, which is supposed to be in the spring, isn't it? The actual proposal from a a private company or a coalition of companies. When that comes in, I guess we'll have a clearer picture. But obviously that's what Carney wants. He just wants it to drag on so that he can kind of forget about it. I hope that his his supporters can forget about it.
I don't know if anybody's going to forget about it, but we're going to leave off with our little meme here. Somebody put this graphic out there. And Tim Hortons, once a very strong Canadian brand, no longer owned by Canadians, started, I think the young lady took the insurance money, I believe, and this is from memory, took the insurance money from Tim Horton, who was a hockey player, and built the first coffee shop, and then and then Paul Harvey, as the rest of the story, became one of Canada's most iconic brands. And then I believe it was sold to, was it Pepsi? And then sold again?
Some Brazilian venture capitalist or something has got a huge stake in it now.
And then there's a lot of people that are very angry with Tim Hortons right now. I mean, you can show your disappointment with Tim Hortons very simply.
Yeah.
Seems simple enough.
Don't go. I can remember the first time I ever came to Canada. I remember being like introduced to Tim Hortons, and there was a relative of mine that was doing the introduction, and he was so proud. It was like he was beaming with patriotic joy and pride, or he's talking about like the hockey player himself and talking about how it's like, a rival to the American fast food chains and all that. I think it used to be a source of great pride, didn't it? Like it was almost a patriotic requirement to have a Tim's, but that seems, I can't remember the last time I spoke to somebody that is even neutral about Tim Hortons. Everybody seems to hate it.
There used to be, I think, a skit on This Hour's 22 Minutes or the Royal Canadian Air Force, one of those two, and it had Mike from Canmore, and that was sitting in the Tim Hortons, I believe. Mike from Canmore, and this is a Tim Hortons again, a coffee shop in May 17, 1964, a couple of years after I was born, in Hamilton, Ontario. Tim Horton, an NHL player, and his partner Jim Sherrod. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Tim died tragically in 1974 in a car accident. Today, oh yeah, Wendy's bought it. It wasn't Pepsi. Wendy's bought it. And then they sold.
Yeah, they put them together, don't they?
And then it got partnered off, and now it is owned by 3G Capital or something like that. Important current ownership.
Restaurant Brands
RBI
International.
Capital, yeah.
But that's a holding company, isn't it?
Yeah. A shilling or something to shield it. Anyway, that's our show.
Popeyes, they're also in there.
Renee Merrifield on tomorrow with Beyond the Ballot, and that show's done really well. It's done like tens of thousands of viewers now on that show, and we want to get this show to that as well. Please help us like, share, subscribe. Canada's best undiscovered news commentary show on the internet, where we give you the straight stuff, a little bit of sarcasm, a little bit of fun, and hopefully make you question power as opposed to just digesting Liberal talking points or any government talking points, NDP, Liberal, Conservative. Your job is to question, not to just take it. And policies that benefit the few at the expense of the many need to be stopped. That's what elitism is. And with that said, we're in the Christmas week. Iain and I are back tomorrow, and we'll tell you what's going on for the rest of the Christmas week after that. I think it's going to be spotty at best as we head into Christmas and the New Year, but we have lots of lofty goals for the new year in 2026, and you can help us achieve those by being a regular subscriber and viewer. Thank you for watching Now Media.